Now, let me tell you a story about, unfortunately, 30 years of injustice. This happens to be in North Carolina. Two fellows were in jail. Not just in jail, one of them was on death row. Henry Lee McCollum, who's 50, spent 3 decades on death row. And Leon Brown, who's his brother, who's 46, was serving a life sentence. Well, now, when you find out why they were sentenced, you might think that it makes sense. They confessed to a crime. It was a brutal crime, a rape of a young girl, 11 years old, and then she was strangled with her own bra and left to die. It's just horrible, right? Now, the story's a little more complicated than that, because what we're going to have to keep in mind is, if a crime is brutal, that doesn't mean you have the right guys. Okay, so now we pick it up from the New York Times. 30 years after their convictions, in the rape and murder of an 11-year-old girl in rural North Carolina, based on confessions that they quickly repudiated and said were coerced, 2 mentally disabled half-brothers were declared innocent and ordered to release Tuesday by a judge here. Now, understand that they were mentally disabled throughout. Okay, they have the intelligence of about a 9-year-old. So McCollum was pressured for 5 hours, screamed at. He said it was pressure like I'd never had in my entire life. I didn't understand it. Sign the confession, sign the confession. We'll tell you what he did in a second, okay, in terms of that confession issue. But let me continue here. This is Jonathan M. Katz and Eric L. Colm for the New York Times. The case against the men, always weak, fell apart after DNA evidence implicated another man whose possible involvement had been somehow overlooked by the authorities, even though he lived only a block from where the victim's body was found, and he had admitted to committing a similar rape and murder around the same time. Isn't that amazing? Turns out it's a guy who lived a block from the girl who was raped and killed. He had done similar crimes before. In fact, he got arrested a couple of weeks later for raping another girl in the neighborhood. They didn't bother looking into that, okay? We already have our confession. Here, let me tell you more about the guy who actually did it, and it turned out it was his DNA. Officials never explained why, despite the remarkable similarities in the crimes, they kept their focus on Mr. McCollum and Mr. Brown, even as the main men proclaimed their innocence. Well, that one's fairly easy to explain. I can tell you why. Because as soon as they got the confession, they're like, who cares, right or wrong? We got our guys. I don't want extra work. Then I'm going to have to say I was wrong and I pressured the wrong guys, mentally disabled guys, into a wrong confession. Well, that wouldn't look good on my record. So let's just prosecute them and kill them. Let's give them a death sentence. Cops, prosecutors, who cares? Well, there's the guy right next door who also raped another girl. Can you look into her? No, no, no. We already got the confession. We already pressured them into it. So how did that happen? Well, they browbeat McCollum for 5 straight hours. They yell at him. He's never experienced anything like this in his life. And they explain, after Henry McCollum signed a statement written in longhand by the investigators, he asked, can I go home now? The guy is mentally disabled. He couldn't even write it out. It's not clear that he could even read it. They write it out for him. They have it sign it. It's so obvious he doesn't understand it because he's like, okay, good, I signed it now. Can I go home? He thinks he can go home after he signs it. And the sons of bitches in the room are like, haha, we got him. What did you get? All right, now let me tell you what happened to his brother, Mr. Brown. Before the night was done, Mr. Brown, after being told that his half-brother had confessed and facing similar threats that he could be executed if he did not cooperate, also signed a confession. By the way, one was 19 at the time, and the other one was 15. They tell a 15-year-old, again, disabled, and they say, you're going to get executed, you're going to get executed unless you sign this thing. And then what does he do? He signs. And then they're like, boom, job well done, everybody go home. And you guys go on death row. They were both on death row initially. There was an appeal, and then McCollum stayed on death row after the appeal, and Brown got a life sentence. It actually went all the way to the Supreme Court. What happened there? Well, let's explain. In 1994, when the United States Supreme Court turned down a request to review the case, Justice Antonin Scalia described Mr. McCollum's crime as so heinous that it would be hard to argue against lethal injection. Now, Scalia thinks he's such a genius, and he's always putting down the other justices and writing this flowery language. Oh, please, if you realize. You knucklehead, you idiot. It's not the heinousness of the crime that's the issue. It's whether they did it or not. That's why they're appealing. They're not appealing saying, the crime wasn't so bad. Nobody says that. They've never said that. They said the crime is terrible. You should get the guy who did it and not the guys who didn't do it. And Scalia is like, crime's terrible, let's kill him. But kill who? Kill the wrong guys? Well, that's, of course, the huge problem with the death penalty that people like Scalia will not recognize. I used to be in favor of the death penalty, but I understood because of DNA evidence that it turns out a lot of the guys didn't do it, like these two brothers. How can we sit here and go, screw it, let's take a chance? We know some of them didn't do it. We know there's these horrible convictions. Let's kill them all anyway. What kind of a person says that? I guess a person like Scalia. As recently as 2010, the North Carolina Republican Party put Mr. McCollum's booking photograph on campaign flyers that accuse a Democratic candidate of being soft on crime. They put these guys on posters and said, ha ha, look at that, we got them, but the Democrats would have been soft on them, and that's why they haven't executed them. Turns out they were innocent. Did the Republican Party apologize? Oh, sorry about that. We were tough on crime on the wrong guys. And in a sense, it's almost creating more crime. It's more murder of the wrong people. We're still waiting on that apology from the North Carolina Republican Party. It has not been forthcoming yet. Now, finally, let's go to the prosecutor who prosecuted them in the first place. New York Times describes him this way. The two young defendants were prosecuted by Joe Freeman Britt, the 6'6", Bible-quoting district attorney who was later profiled by 60 Minutes as the country's deadliest DA because he sought the death penalty so often. So, guy brags about it, reading the Bible as if he's moral, right? And he keeps quoting the Bible in court, and he says, and I'm the deadliest DA. I kill you whether you're guilty or innocent. Doesn't matter. I just kill you. You must be so proud, man. And that's what this is about. A lot of it is about pride. You should read that section in the Bible, by the way, Mr. Britt, about pride. Because the idea is, I can't ever be wrong. If I convicted them, then they must be guilty. Who cares about DNA? Who cares about false confessions? Who cares that they're mentally disabled? Who cares that we pressured them into it? Who cares that the obvious guy who did it was right next to us? That guy, by the way, would oftentimes say, I don't know who did it, but it definitely wasn't those two brothers. You've got a guy saying that. Will you look into it? No, because that would blemish his precious, precious career as a prosecutor. No, he's going to go quote the Bible to you anyway. Anyway, obviously in this case, he's 100% wrong. That's why they let the guys out. So they asked him about it. Joe Freeman Britt, the original prosecutor, told the News and Observer last week that he still believed the men were guilty. He still would have put them to death. He would have put McCollum to death, and he would have never let out Brown after 30 years of horrible, horrific injustice.